this disingenuous form of activism can lead to tokenism. And sure, I'm just going to pop, in Irish Arab onto the board of directors. There's our, diversity, box ticked.
Welcome to episode 3 of Gorm TV. We are a web show and creative network that dissects the social issues that affect Ireland's multicultural generation. So again, today I have my wonderful panelists, and today we're going to ask ourselves the question, or the title of today's episode is The Wage for Wokeness. So in the past year, let's say, we've seen this sort of upspringing of online activism and people sort of taking a stand on issues that they believe is correct and they believe is right in terms of how they see it online, and let's say through protests, and let's say through online protests as well. So one thing I've kind of noticed is sometimes a lot of that is, let's say, lip service, or just wanting to follow trends, or to me, sometimes it kind of felt disingenuous. And I want to ask the question to my panelists here, like, do we feel like the current upspringing of activism and online activism, do we feel that's wholly genuine? Do we think it's moving our society forward?
Well, just to begin by acknowledging the kind of title of this discussion, The Wage for Wokeness, if we firstly kind of assess that word wokeness, which is very much a loaded term in the times we're living in, I'd refer to the definition as per the Cambridge Dictionary. I believe it states the dictionary that wokeness is an awareness of social issues like racism or injustice. And as you said, over the past year, we've seen people hop upon us kind of sort of bandwagon on which it was popular and it was trendy and fashionable to talk about these issues. But I think it's not inherently a bad thing that more people are talking about this issue, especially because of the fact that there were, once upon a time, let's say, for example, in segregationist America, the normal viewpoint, the normal perspective was one of racism and white supremacy. That was to be expected. Let's say we had a hierarchy of things we could expect from people. At the very top, at a particular time in history, it was white supremacy. The bottom was probably a viewpoint of equality. Now, the best thing you can be is an active activist trying to effect a positive change within our society. The worst thing you can be is a disingenuous activist. So I think the changes in the hierarchical structure of what we can expect from people it signifies a sort of progress that we've made when it comes to interacting with these big issues within our society. But in terms of that term wokeness, as per how I've seen it in activism and how it's been expressed, I think it's very much married to what we would term identity politics. It's very much based upon an identitarian way of seeing the world. And I think this is somewhat problematic in the sense that you all know me, I know you, we're panelists and we're teammates in a sense. And when you see me, I like to think that you see Eric and you don't necessarily see, I don't know, a black, male, heterosexual, identitarian labels that you would ascribe to me. And I think the problem with the way we articulate activism today is that it's somewhat married to identity politics. And we think that when we look at someone and we look at their identity, it gives us an entire whole image picture of who they are and how they navigate life. But I think individuals are far more deeper than that, and this way of looking at people disregards the complexity of humanity. So my problem with kind of wokeness as a term is not necessarily the fact that we're having difficult conversations, it's that the dictionary or thesaurus or our articulation of individuals of society is based on an identitarian way of speaking about things, which I think disregards, again, the complexity of human life. So I think we need to appeal to humanity. We need to spiritually try and connect with people and understand who they are based on who they truly are as individuals, and from there lead our activism in a way that is genuine and not disingenuous.
Thanks, Eric. I totally agree with you when you say that in certain circumstances of activism, that there are identity like items that people see before the person's will for change. But sometimes at the same time, I would say that those identity markers at the same time is important, I would say, for putting certain voices forward first. Do you get what I mean? In certain issues. So yeah, I really like the points that you brought up there. Would anyone want to add to that, or does anyone think alike to Eric or differently?
From my viewpoint, disingenuous or not, I really don't care, because if you are disingenuous, it comes across. So again, if we take BLM as an example, and everybody was posting black squares, and a lot of corporate bands hopped on the bandwagon and were also, putting up black squares, but it was then evident after the fact who actually genuinely cared about the issue in terms of, corporations, and who didn't. And so if you're doing something like this in a way that's not really, you don't really care, there's no real passion there, it shows. And to be honest with you, even if I watched someone who was telling me about something, let's just say some topic that they were deeply passionate about or whatever, I can sense that energy, and then I can take that forward and think for myself. And the same way, if I watch someone who is passing on a message that's just kind of what everybody's saying, or jumping on the bandwagon, it shows, and I can take that forward and decide, oh, I actually do feel deeper than that person about this issue, so therefore I will now take the steps to, whether it's post or protest or whatever. I think with social media, it just makes sense that activism lives there, because we all live there. Like, we're all on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook 24/7. We're never really away from that world. It's just, it's in your pocket. That world is in your pocket. So activism now makes sense that it's in social media, because that's just the world that we're living in now. And it's by far the quickest, most effective way of disseminating a message. Back in the day, you would have had to organize, marches and what have you. But now, again, even something as simple as posting a black square, even if you don't say anything, it just shows that I'm an ally. Now, whether you're a genuine ally or you're not, it doesn't matter. It just means that we can see the numbers of people who care about the subject.
I agree with that, to be honest. And I think that there's power in numbers, let's say, whether it's genuine or not genuine, it could strike to have an agenda and push that agenda forward. So I agree with that in those terms. But in terms of like online activism, I think that it's kind of like a two-way street, where you see these big corporations kind of supporting them, and then you want to support them because they're supporting them, but again, it's, you don't know if it's genuine or not. So it's really important, your points that you brought up there.
I think if we look at, for example, if you just look at, for example, like at Warner Music or Sony, who own pretty much all music, and we know there are a certain demographic of people who don't have equal rights contribute heavily to that industry. I mean, billions to that industry. However, if you look at their board of directors, not one person of color. Yet they're the very same people who are like, oh, we support the movement, and we're going to donate X and X money or whatever. But they don't really take it to the level where we need them to take it. We're just getting a surface level, oh, we stand with you and we agree. Well, what we really need is representation. We want somebody on your board who can advocate for us, who can push forward the agenda. And that's just my little two piece. Sorry.
No, that's no problem. Sarah, were you going to add something?
Yeah, no, just on the point of like it being disingenuous. I think when it comes to being woke, it's the kind of the idea is it's raising awareness to a cause. But when you could look at like the environmental movement or the LGBT movement, and then even BLM, in terms of, can such disingenuousness harm the movement? So you have, for example, in the United States, when they had the Black Lives Matters protests, you all of a sudden had these groups that Trump had called Antifa, and that these guys were breaking into to shops and so on, and then it getting blamed on the African American and blaming it on the movement. Basically, if there was no protest, this wouldn't have happened, and so on. So this kind of the idea of activism in terms of it being disingenuous can harm the movement. You have the same thing with the environmental movement. If certain political parties push for climate action and so on, but then when they get into government, they actually don't deliver on climate justice, and then that harms the environmental movement in terms of climate action. You've got then, in terms of the LGBT community, when we had our referendum for marriage equality. Yes, all companies jumped on the LGBT movement bandwagon and like had all the pride stickers on their windows and so on. But in that sense, that may have been disingenuous, because you might question if there are anyone from the LGBT community on their boards and so on. But we accomplished the referendum and we got equality, and it may have created an awareness. So I think there's a fine line between all that, and you kind of have to balance it out. And I think being able to identify it is really, really important. I do like the idea that, we have to move away from pure identity politics, that, because that's where, for example, environmentalists, they can be criticized for not doing enough when it comes to social justice matters, and that climate action is about climate justice and not impacting the most vulnerable in our society with your heavy carbon tax and so on and so forth. So I think it's important to be able to identify that, and it's just a comment from just listening to Eric and to Tabby on that's my input there.
No, that's no problem. I really understand where you're coming from when you say that. There is a fine line, and where you sit on that line, particularly when you're in a position of power, or when you're in like a huge, large corporation. It's really, I would hate to be one of the decision makers there, because it would be really hard to show and come across in a sort of genuine way when you may not even have like staff that represent what you're pushing forward, or things like that.
But it also can lead to tokenism.
Exactly.
And that's a fear of mine. This disingenuous form of activism can lead to tokenism. And sure, I'm just going to pop, an Irish Arab onto the board of directors. There's our, diversity, box ticked, or we'll throw in a woman on that board because there's our gender box ticked. So it's
yeah, that's one of my fears as well, actually, when I think about it, when it comes to like us having like diverse spaces and diverse groups, that tokenism thing, that okay, is this person, obviously you'd want the person to be competent in what they do, but is it just like for you to tick a box? There's importance in diversity of background and experience. There is an importance of diversity of like knowledge, experience, input, and what you can bring to the company, not just your identity marker. So yeah, I think that's important to touch on as well. So
Mamobo, I'd like to just briefly interject, just to add to what you say. But all of you have been saying, to kind of feed into it. I guess what I was saying earlier, I was trying to signify how there's been a cultural shift in that once it was unpopular to be deemed as, for example, an anti-racist, and now it is popular to be so. Therefore, the worst you could possibly be is a disingenuous anti-racist. A brief caveat of what I've just said, and possibly a flaw that I think I've just learned from listening to all of you, is the fact that simply just because someone appears to be a particular race, just because someone is ostensibly an anti-racist activist, doesn't mean that internally they subscribe to anti-racist principles. There's actually a study done by the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission last year, which showed that I think when polled and when people in our country could express their identity unanimously without unanimity, they claimed that they were for Black migration to Ireland. But when they could answer the questions anonymously, I believe it was somewhere around 60% of people polled in Ireland claimed that they were not for Black migration. So if it appears to be a particular way that is progressive, if things aren't on the ground behind the veil of fake activism progressing in a positive way, the question could be, what's the point of disingenuous activism in the first place?
Definitely.
even if you step outside sort of like race issues, if you look at like a classic example, Marcus Rashford, the UK footballer, and his drive to get, you know, kids fed by the government, and that really took off on Twitter, and it really took off on Instagram. I don't have any children in the UK, but I was one of the people who were like, you know, commenting and saying, yes, I agree, liking the posts. And that kind of movement, I don't want to say I'm disingenuous about that topic, but it's not one that affects me or affects anyone that I know directly. So therefore, it's just very much for me, it's just a service level. Yes, this is the right thing to do, even though I don't care that deeply about, not care, but you know what I mean. But something like that really took off on social media, because everybody was posting about it, and everybody was wondering, how is this 22-year-old guy doing something that we're paying thousands to government ministers to do? And I genuinely think that if he didn't have that platform, it really would not have taken off the way that it did. And that's just a beautiful example of how social media can be used for activism and for good.
Definitely. And that kind of brought the question in my head, like, maybe we can discuss this later, but it brought the question in my head, like, okay, do we really have to rely on social media influencers to bring the discussion forward? Why can't people in positions of powers, like, okay, they probably are like policymakers, legislators that are trying to put this agenda forward, but like in terms of social media spaces, do we have to rely on influencers to do that? That's just like Shane and Toby to the conversation. What do you guys think?
Yeah, just to add there, it's interesting. It's an interesting one because anything, as we know, with human beings, even if something has the best of intentions or the good intentions, human beings have the ability of actually turning that around and actually using it for its not intended purposes. You know, so so with that in mind, and we can see that throughout history, in the past, in the present, and probably in the future, whereby we are, and I suppose that's why we are humans. You know, we can use a fork or a spoon that you can use to eat. You can use to kill somebody or something or anything. So we can even use that, you know, a simple object. Now, when it comes to this activism and wokeness, there is a saying that I saw that said, if somebody says the truth or is aligning with the truth, to dismiss that, just call the person crazy or a conspiracy theorist or woke, or and I think that word is starting to have a negative impact in a way that if you say somebody's woke, automatically it's almost saying somebody's kind of crazy now, you know. Unfortunately, even if they share the truth, and if they are pure of heart, and they are and their intent is of a positive and of intent. So and again, we have to give room for that, and for the intentions not to be pure, for people to jump on the bandwagon and use it. But like Tabby said, it's better for them to be. I think everybody actually says it. It's better for there to be a fake wokenessness than no wokenessness at all. In the grand scheme of things, it's better that everybody share those um um black
Black
squares,
boxes. Yeah.
exactly, than no one sharing it at all, even if they're not on board or with it or understand what's happening. But then is up to the individual and up to us to have the awareness, the assertiveness, the sensitivity to be able to discern when someone is of genuine heart and when someone is not. And again, just to touch on the on what Mamobo said, are we now relying on influencers and social media to actually carry out activism work? Because what that now happen is that all of a sudden, because I've seen it, when George Floyd, I mean, when I said George Floyd, I was meant to say George, got killed here got murdered in Ireland, and then the BLM movement, and that created a shift even within family, within friends, because everybody start looking at, you should be sharing something on social media, and you start blaming, or you start having a ill feeling towards somebody that is not actively sharing or posting, because almost now it's almost seem like that's the only way to fight injustice. It's not. It's just one of the many tools, and there might be somebody fighting injustice their own way, and that's just as respected and respectable and needed as much as people using social media voices. For me, because for me, I cannot take it back to myself that how many changes have I changed personally in my life because of a social media post. Now, if if the changes, so the thing is, I have to put myself there to kind of see, does it really make any changes, or are people just doing that just to feel free, like you've get it off your chest, you've done it, and yeah, I fight a good fight, yeah, back doing what I want to do because you've shared one or two or three or four things online. um but then there are people whereby they are writing to legislation offices, they are sleeping outside legislation offices, going into these places physically, ra- rather than actually just using their voice socially, because I mean on social media, because obviously everybody is doing it. And which one is more effective, that's debatable, that's debatable. And depending on where you are situated, like for me now, for example, now social media is not my thing. I would never use my social, I would share what I need to share, but it's not where my or activism starts. It's part of a small part of it. My activism starts when I am in, I make sure I enable myself to be in the presence of people that make changes and law. Then my that's where my fights take place. I will make sure that I have the knowledge, the experience, the key sets, to be able to be par on par with somebody of that. I mean, to be in settings whereby my voice, not me posting, my voice, my action is taken into consideration, and that is actually making a change.
Definitely. Definitely, Toby. Some of your points kind of came across to me as well. Like, though there is an importance of having that social media presence, so people who are ignorant to certain things, they can be aware and things like that. There is I would not say more, but there's a lot of importance of people who are actually like out there writing to policymakers, people that are in policy themselves, working, striving towards actual tangible changes that need to happen, and people using their own creative backgrounds, whether it is like arts, dance, to make creative solutions towards making changes in our society, which I think is really important alongside this sort of social media kind of boom and wokeness online. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tiziana?
Just to add one thing, it's just that for example, now everybody knows, well, if you know now, Denise Chyla.
Mhm.
Yeah, Denise, the musician,
Mhm.
songwriter, black,
Mhm.
person of color, black, whatever. She's a musician. I see her as a musician, black, white. But now she's actually now the Minister of Education have appointed her as one of the arts, cultural and arts, ambassador of Ireland.
Amazing.
So even though she's a musician, she's a rapper, man, she's sick. Her music is dope. But now she's now in a place of, I don't want to say power, but yeah, but
Her
power.
voice can be heard.
Her
Her
voice
voice
can
can
be.
be heard.
Let's
Definitely.
forget the music now. She's used the music to open up a place to enter,
Mhm.
and she has so much skills apart from the music side that she can now call for a change.
Mhm.
and that's and that's what I do as well, in a nutshell. I'm a
Definitely.
dancer, I perform and do whatever, but I'm very good at it, and I make sure I'm very good at it, that it's going to open doors. And so that when I go in, because that's the same thing Muhammad Ali done. That's the same thing all these athletes does, that they use something to make sure to break down that barrier so that they can go in to now make like core and implemented change.
Definitely. And that's the important, I think that's a lot of times that's the importance of these sort of creative outlets as well, whether it's sport or arts, music, dance, they can be paths as well to create an active changes in society, definitely. Tiziana, Shane, do you want to add?
Yeah, I'm going to try and add something. Yeah, I must say that I agree with most of the things that have been said so far. So just from a personal point of view, I think online activism has been very important for me in the last year because, because of COVID, because of the pandemic and lockdown. So I didn't feel safe to go and march in the street, for example. I've done it before COVID, but because of all the restrictions and the idea that there can be thousands of people all on the same street doesn't really, I felt uncomfortable. So I tried to take my activism online. So it's great that, there is social media and then you can try and share your message. Apart from that, I think, it's a good thing that we are actually witnessing a shift in perspective. So it's true that maybe for some companies and multinationals, they're not really maybe genuine when they say that they support Black Lives Matter or other minorities, because then if you look at, how much they pay people or who is on their board of director, they don't do it. But I think it's a good thing because it's a start. As you said, I'm going to, use some of your ideas. Sorry, but I'm plagiarizing people here, but I think it can be an entry point. So it's better than nothing. But, I think we shouldn't stop there. We should ask for a systemic change. In the long run, it's not enough to just say that you support, a movement. It's a start, but, we shouldn't stop there. I think it's good. It's a good start, but we should try and demand more. And in the end, yes, we should go for more systemic change.
Definitely. Thanks, Tiziana. I think that's the importance of having both the social media people to start of get that momentum going, and then the people that are in the rooms, the policymakers that have that sort of activism heart, let's say, to actively make those steps towards actual systemic change. Definitely. Shane, do you want to add anything to the conversation?
Yeah, I think that in some circumstances, like it was earlier suggested, that the idea of wokeness, political correctness, even virtue signaling, all these kind of expressions can be used very negatively and can be used as kind of like a stick to beat people with as well. I would definitely think it can go in two ways. Like it can definitely be, there can be definitely a disingenuous and fake level of wokeness, but there can be a real level of trying to encourage, actual real change in social life, and some people really try to undermine it by using expressions like that, like even regarding the pictures leak of various women recently, and some men sharing stuff like, they'd be very wary of blokes virtue signaling around, in solidarity with those kind of women, and just really kind of negative conversations around that, and yeah, I just, because you can definitely see, like, that would stop, to me anyway, that would stop people that genuinely care about driving change forward, and I've definitely had it against me before, of people being in some ways, slanderous or whatever towards whatever kind of stuff that I've shared myself, and it kind of evokes that kind of feeling of, you start to question yourself, and you're like, why am I doing this in the first place? Am I doing it genuinely, or what are my feelings around it? Yeah, So that's kind of my kind of take on it, or one of my takes anyway, certainly.
Definitely. Thanks a million, Shane. And what kind of propped up in my head when you were talking about that is like the opportunity for learning as well. So like whether your posts or your tweets or whatever may be genuine or not genuine, somebody else could read that and it may spark something from that, and they may actually learn something that is genuine. So I think from what you were saying there would add to this sort of like, okay, it may be genuine, it may not be genuine, but it's for a wholesome change or a systemic change or societal change, whatever you want to call it. It's adding to that change in society that could potentially change the way we see
and I think
the world.
As Toby was kind of mentioning as well, like social media is definitely just one platform that you need to use, and you know, just actually having further conversations is very, very important. And even just in terms of like, I know I need, like I was even questioning myself probably earlier this week of like, maybe I need to do more as well. Obviously I do certain things in social media and emails and various different things like that, but even just having further, and I definitely do have difficult conversations, but I definitely think that I need to do more. Like how often do I have the conversation with my direct family, and definitely have conversations with my friends and stuff like that. But yeah, sometimes it can be very difficult and awkward to have it kind of with your family. And I don't think my family are really backwards, but I definitely think that I personally I need to do more there as well. And I think everyone in society really does.
And can I just briefly go, Sabi, sorry, go on, you can speak first.
I was just going to very quickly say, I think what we're all trying to say in a nutshell really is that it's important to understand that social media activism isn't everybody's lane. There are multiple lanes that you can use. Some people write think pieces, some people make amazing art. I know, like with Breonna Taylor, I was seeing just gorgeous imagery, gorgeous art. Some people write music, some people do theater, some people do dance, some people get on Twitter and just, you know, and then some people just have conversations with their immediate family. It doesn't have to be a social media thing, but obviously everybody has a social media. So I know we're kind of at that little teeter of performative allyship versus true allyship. But something that I have personally been enjoying on Twitter, and this is going to sound really petty, but oh well, is this new trend of "is this you?" where somebody will post something and then someone will find something that completely contradicts what they're trying to say that they had posted, and it's like, "This you? Is this? Were you not just saying this like 2 months ago?" So, like, if you're putting, you know, if you are being an activist on social media, and if you are disingenuous, it is going to show, and more than likely, Black Twitter will call you out. So
literally.
Just to briefly supplement what has been said thus far, I really like what Tavi was about to say, and I was actually going to say something reminiscent of that, in the sense that we all have different languages that we can use to do activism. As Tavi said there, it can be art, it can be music, it can be dancing, whatever it is. But I think one thing that we should definitely not neglect or give up on is the power that we have as individuals through our languages of activism to shift the culture. Because ultimately, I think sometimes uphold the notion that it's politics that affect the change within society. But the politicians are trying to win over the public. You know, they need the public to get elected. The corporations are trying to win over the public. They need the public's capital to capitalistically thrive. So when culture shifts within the population, the politicians and the corporations conform to culture. If BLM was unpopular, we'll be able to reflect unpopular BLM sentiments in the statements released by corporations and in the speeches delivered by politicians. But because it is popular, politicians and corporations, they tap dance to the beat and to the tune that the culture that we dictate as individuals speaks to. So I think it's so important for people to stick to their lanes and understand that their lane is a powerful one. And the power and the change does not always rest within the decision makers all the time, because they make decisions as per the culture that we shape.
Definitely.
Just to add on that, because Einstein said it, and he said it in a quote: "Be the change you want to see in the world." So you don't have to be on a pedestal or whatever. See that small circle that you're in? Be the change in that circle, and let that propagate. Then the person that you are the change for will be the change in their own circle, and so on and so forth. So and to be brave enough, I think each individual just have to be brave enough within their own skill set, and be able to say when they need to actually upskill, or when they need to actually voice out, or either creatively, or whatever approach. Everybody is unique, and I think that's what we have to preach more of, that you don't have to be on social media, and you don't have to follow that bandwagon. If that's your thing, fair play, that's you, that do you. But just make sure to always do you in your small circle.
Definitely. And I think it's the individual voice is super important. And when you were talking about like having that change that you want to see, again, it's down to that self-awareness and knowing what you are good at and what you aren't good at, and having that forward. It just kind of reminded me of what Eric said of like a class that I was teaching with my colleague and friend Sandrine and Ndahiro. And we were just talking to the students about making change on campus and things like that. And we were reminding them that the staff or the people that are in charge of the university, they rely on the students. When you were talking about the citizens and the politicians, I was like, without the students, there is no university. So they need to have their voice. If they want something that is really important to them to change, then that change can be done if they make their voice known and their voice heard to the people in power and the position. The people in power are nothing without the students, because at the end of the day, they're the one paying their paycheck and things like that. So it's important for us to make those connections within our circles, within the communities that we have, in order to create change in the future and use our voice. Because a lot of time people, we don't believe our voice is important enough or useful in these sort of situations. But we have to just remember that it is, and it's not necessarily a voice I'm saying in terms of speaking, but it may be doing, as in like writing a letter, calling up a politician, creating a dance, creating an art piece, that those kind of little things, like the little steps we can take towards creating change. And again, going back to the topic that we are, if you're doing it genuinely, that's awesome. We love you. If you're not doing it generally, well, it could help someone else in the future. So yeah, definitely.
Can I ask a question to the floor? Do you think there's levels to wokeness, in the sense that, I know when I would have first started my journey years ago, it was like, it didn't really affect me. Whereas now, and I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm an empath and I never thought I was an empath. Because I've always thought, oh, I hate everyone, everything and everyone equally. But now, you know, I'm easily triggered, and like I get so angry, and it genuinely feels like being fully woke means that you live in a constant state of rage, like rage at everything and everyone and everything. Like, for example, yesterday I was on to my friend sent me a message going, oh, did you see that, you know, Brian randomly from Backstreet Boys has come out in support of Trump and has said all these crazy things. And then I was just like, immediately delete every single Backstreet Boys song. They are never getting a cent out of me, even though they're probably getting like a cent out of my Spotify play. But I feel like being fully and truly woke, you just live in a constant state of anger. And I find myself needing to unplug from social media way more than I ever did. I'm currently on a hiatus from Instagram at the minute. It's too much. So I don't know if anybody else feels that there's just levels to.
I think that's that does happen. I've noticed a lot of my friends who are going through the exact same thing that you're going through. And for me, I don't know what it is. I've put in my mind that we're all on different journeys, and you know, there's a generational thing as well. You know, our generation is going to be a lot more aware about social justice issues than our, you know, the older generation, you know, just, you know, and or some people in different areas, you know. And I think even I see it even within our own generation. Sometimes I'm like, do you not watch the news? How do you not know what's going on, you know? But at the same time, I always put it in my mind, you know, everybody's on their own journey. There's a learning journey. And like, someone came out to me recently who was a Trump supporter during our time in university. And he came out to me and he said, you know, Sarah, you know, it was 2 years into his presidency, I realized what was going on. I realized what was going on in my mind, you know, and, you know, he said, I realized it was like a cult following him, you know? And I said to him, look, dude, you're on your journey. I was able to see over that. I was able to see you as a person and realized, right, there's a lot more to this, and I'm just going to really bite my tongue and be patient, you know, and that's what I had to do, you know. And I think that's one of the things, is we need to be careful of canceling people out, let's say, because let's say, like, for example, Hillary Clinton, she did a huge mistake, and her big mistake was she called anyone who voted for Trump the deplorables, you know, they're deplorable. And she was talking about a large population of US citizens who, if she had, you know, dug deep, she would have seen that there was a lot of social and class inequalities that was going on, that they thought that he was going to be the way out of that. You know what I mean? So I think what we need to constantly remind ourselves is, what stone is in that person's shoe? What's going on with that person, you know, that perhaps they don't understand. Maybe they don't watch the news. Maybe that's not what they like to do. I'm not a big fashion magazine person, so I haven't a clue what's going on in the celeb life or any of that. And I'm sure some of my friends are going, how the hell does she not know who that is? You know, whereas if you talk to me about politics, I'd be like, I know, you know. So I think we just have to remember that everybody's on a different journey, and that's that kind of tapping into ourselves and saying, right, okay, breathe. That person's on a different journey to mine, and I'm just going to try and go through it with them. But at the same time, if there's something really intolerant and absolutely racist, you know, we have to, or discriminatory, we really have to come out on it hard. Definitely. You know.
Can I just comment and also briefly add to what Sarah said? I think Sarah beautifully articulated the nuance that we need when addressing wokeness and addressing problems that exist within society. What I tried to kind of express earlier on in the conversation was the fact that, as per the definition of wokeness, sometimes when we look at individuals, we look at their political preference, maybe who they support, who they are, and their identity. But if we delve deeper into past the veil of identity, past the veil of preference, to be able to acknowledge the complexity of the individual. And once we do that, it sometimes gives us a picture as to how they prefer what they do and like what they do. I deplore Donald Trump. I'm going to be honest with all of you, but I think the biggest mistake that a lot of people do is overlook why a lot of people turn to Trump. And once you cast Trump supporters, as Sarah said, as Hillary Clinton did, as deplorable, what you're doing is egging them on down into the echo chamber that they're already in, where there are a lot of bad ideas and things regarding Trump. But once you appeal to the common humanity of those people, once you try and empathize, once you try and broaden your scope and encompass some of the things that they say, then you have a better chance of persuading them and influencing them to think as you do, and bringing them closer to your opinions and beliefs, which you may think are more reasonable. So I think all in all, we need to try and appeal to that common humanity and get away from casting our opinions on people based on identity and based on preferences. I think this is very important. Although I do empathize with Tabby's sentiments, and I do find myself very angry at times when I look at what's going on on social media.
Definitely. And just on that, I'm just gonna close the conversation.
Sorry, just as you were saying that, I'm thinking to myself, God, you guys are so much better humans than I am, because I'm one or the two.
That's so funny. That's so funny.
Can I just jump in?
Okay, this will be the last point before
it's just for what Tabby just said, because the thing is, and obviously what Eric as well shared, is that what's the definition of woke, and it's known that all of the people or persons that are aware on a social level suffer in society, in a shape or form. So once you know the definition of what woke is, then you apply it to yourself, and then you have to be honest within yourself. So if something is triggering you from outwardly, and it's actually having an effect inwardly, then you have to then go inwardly and see why, and you have to really ask yourself those difficult questions. And then lastly, there is 7 intelligences that for me, when somebody say wokeness or woke, I'm looking at that. I'm looking at that person from seven lenses, and the first one would be from financial point of view. How woke are they with their financial intelligence? How woke are they in their social in their social settings, in the social and economical things that's happening? How woke are they in their relationship? In the relationship they have with family, friends, intimate relationship. How woke are they sexually? You understand? Then and then going deeper, how woke are they mentally, and then spiritually, and then physically? So all these 7 aspects of intelligences, for me, that's what I feel. When somebody say woke, is on those areas. And even when you go to sociology and psychology, all these 7 areas are what a human being is actually measured from. That's the perspective. So for me, if a human being can tackle all those 7, they will be able to emotionally then control whatever comes themselves. There's a wall of penetration that nothing can penetrate in. And obviously you have to kind of then practice those, and you have to be in crazy situation to really see how woke you are. You get me? So it's a lot of self. It's a lot of self, and we're easy and we're quick to say, oh, he's bad or she's bad, or because they've triggered something or something that you don't agree with. And then I look at my child. She's 5 years old, 6. Yeah, she's gonna be 6. She doesn't have a clue what's happening, and she's at peace with whatever she's doing. She's literally at peace. And I'm like, you know what? That's the state I want. I want to achieve at the old as older as I get, as more. I want to be able to have an ability of detachment. You understand that whatever that is happening, but I control whatever that is happening inside. So
definitely, that's a great point to have. Like your daughter, I kind of want to be 7 again at times with all these things, because it just stresses you out. It stresses you out really. And again, like Toby says, it's your I don't know the word, locus of control, let's say, and focusing on what you can do as an individual, and focusing on your circle of control. There are things that are happening outwardly that you may not know, but again, honing into your talents and honing into what you believe is right, and then focusing and putting that forward. Guys, thank you so much for this conversation. Thanks for watching. So what do you think? Do you think being woke is the latest sexy trend? Or do you think it's all for show? We'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. And do like and subscribe if you enjoy the videos. As this project is supported by the Dublin Theatre Festival, make sure to stay tuned for live interactive performances that explore the explosion of social consciousness here in Ireland. Thanks for watching again. Bye-bye.